Today, Rinpoche gave a very clear explanation of how you reach the intermediate state and the experiences that you have within it. Thank you. Okay, so, excuse me, once again we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and specifically the section on training the mind and the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. We look at the general outline of that whole section. We find four categories. First, the mental training. Second category is the measure of the determination to be free, or the measure of one's renunciation, measure of renunciation. And third category is dispelling misconceptions. And then the fourth category is ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. So the first category, which is the mental training, we find it broken down into two sections. First, we have identification of the mind intent on liberation, or identification of renunciation. And then a second category of the method for achieving or developing the mind intent on liberation, the method for realizing renunciation. So getting to that second section, the method for realizing renunciation, we can break that down into two categories. First, reflection on suffering and its origin, and then the second category is a reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent origination. So the first category, reflection on suffering and its origin, it can be broken into two categories: reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and then the next category of reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. So the first category, reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, there are two categories there. First, showing the significance of the Buddha asserting the truth of suffering is the first among the Four Noble Truths, and then the second category is the actual meditation on suffering. So we've gone through all of that, and now we've actually arrived at that section of reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. So there are three categories there. First category is how the afflictions arise. The second category is how you thereby accumulate karma. And then the third category is how you die and are reborn. So how the afflictions arise are broken into four categories: identifying the afflictions, the order of the order in which the afflictions arise, the faults of the afflictions, and the causes of the afflictions. So those are the four categories we'll be going over. And then we have how you thereby accumulate karma, identifying karma you accumulate, and then how you accumulate karma, and then the last section of how you die and are reborn. And then we've got Kabar Gutsu. Okay, so the section then we're dealing with is how you die and are reborn, and there are five categories there: causes of death, the mind at death, where heat gathers, how you reach the intermediate state after death, and how you then take rebirth. So we're going to start the section of how you reach the intermediate state after death. So that is on page 309. Page 309 in English and Buik Nicha Jeju. Okay. 44.
Jiki de jiba shene badun lo sandwa. Wa shene badun lo so wadene. Wadene ma kadon ji chin za ya je chin ro na. Shene badun lo de la ta kan se go ma ro ju ju. Ja ji betele sa ji ju ji ge do. Go ma ro de sang lo sa ji ji ne. Wa de ju ju nan dang bu de 시대 받은 룰로는 하시 받다라 나시 간에 회비수 때네 밤마치 봐 산디 토메 진도 시와당 받은 룰에서 어떻게 받을래 담브레.
Okay, so we begin with just the heading, how you reach the intermediate state after death. So Jayan Sheba in his commentary states that there are 14 different categories in this section. So it begins with this first sentence is the actual first category. As the consciousness leaves from that spot, as just explained, you die and reach the intermediate state immediately, just as one arm of a balancing scale tips up when the other arm tips down. So that's the first category.
신의 받은 로서 다 가다 가서데 네 가서데 나시드 가지 포스나와데 나시 포와다 받을 조든 삼말바 네 디바사긴 지바 이나 tom부 뜨드마 잠차네 네가 받지 아니 원래 잠차네 네가 제 네가 나시 포는 말바 나시 포와다 받을 조버드냐데 산디 토메진드레스 마마바데 토드냐로 받바자 말바
Rinpoche, Chiran, the Gewa, Dan Gewa, Nietzsche Lapsung, Jason, the Chiran, the Ngatsu Shina, the Megewa, Dan Gewa Lapsung, Chiran.
Tagde
Toka ire.
O ta dana the old man no shene, Badun Rulo, and Hashabate, Nashi Gane, Pishu Tene, Pamachiba, Sandi Tomation to Shewatan, Badun Rutes, what about Tamar and Dua?
Lesser.
Taka the Shewatan Badru is that.
Lesser. You know, Chiran, the Megewa Sa.
With the Dama de Lo Taro, the Rila Mare.
Okay, so the first category, as the consciousness leaves that spot, as just explained, you die and reach the intermediate state immediately, just as one arm of a balancing scale tips up when the other arm tips down. So it's stating that once the consciousness leaves the body, then there is an immediate intermediate state. There is an immediate intermediate state. And it says, as the consciousness leaves from that spot, and those who currently cultivate non-virtue, consciousness leaves from the body, coming down from the upper parts, and then it reaches the heart, it leaves. But when those who are cultivating virtue, it comes from the lower parts to the upper parts. So this is the difference, and the meaning is that either way, whether it comes from the upper parts or the lower parts, when the consciousness leaves at that moment, there is intermediate state. So this is the first category of Jayan Sheba's outline.
ne pacha guba pacha da gemme gi karung gi ne le de ni bula de ne so padu ru ju teres su lu la chaba da ga de ane mo troba la gawasana ane kashi motor da gabu are ane kashi what in raman gabu marba gayi sheba gi ja pacha da le ni bo what la ju de ni la de ne ane padu Padun Rubi Juteres. Lula Chaba Lula Chaba Dang, Tribala Gayu, Yonsu Guba na Bacharo. Jumegi late, Nibula Tene, and what the Padun Rubi Juteres, the new dress.
Lesser. Then the Pakcha. Buik Pakcha Irbe.
Pasha good Oh,
the Pakchayim. Okay. So the next category, number 2, is the next sentence, and it's the causes of it. As to its causes, the intermediate state is contingent upon having become attached to your body and being filled with delight in your previous worldly activities. So this is referring to the imprints of your previous activities. So some people like to drive a car. Others have different worldly activities that they delight in or like. So there has to be this attachment to the body and this liking for some sort of worldly activity, and that there's an imprint of within the consciousness. And then it says karma, whether virtuous or non-virtuous. So it's necessary to have also this karma present along with the imprints and this delight and attachment. Diksum.
Badu Tayang, Mila Subi, Ombana, Tangwaza, Nemisha Gusunda, Anju, Memberson of Yosamarita, Badu to Ombukanga Tama, Ombukun Tang, Dua Kanto Joa Tea, Luigi Naba Jens, and Joa Malanji Badu, Badu Ne, Mil Hai Meter, Tuba Majin, Lujan, Zuzu Nebajin, Tuba Matos. Really, Johns, when this is you shall do, then the chief wanted to cheat Geshe Lharampa, the two Lami Tabeton, Lady to shoot on them, on because on two measure Madutan Chesa Washe, Padu de Tun, Tang, Gumba Lesion, you, Lai Metaba, Lai Mejon Tay Ton Laza, Roa Ganki Padu Truna, then the Java Jen to do the member. Son mens, Kundule, Dubayan Shedos, what about somebody? Takante, somebody Nalula, Padu to Ombukusaris, and then make one with the 9 envelopes of Samachasang, and what the Ombukusan. Then the Kubadu 7 Roba in a Retan Chad on to Tobayosamaris, Retan Chad on the light in Rabin Saris, Tobayosamaris, and Ombukusan Kanto Joan Tea, Luigi, Naba Jens, Jensa. That Joa Shamakari Joa Lamba in the May Joa Lamba in the Mudrabus, Lai Joa Lamba in a Sandrabus, Nazu Joa Landa Nazundrabus, Naba Jen. Joa Malanji Bato, Padu Trune, Joa Malanji Bato, Ne Min Lai, made the Tuba Magis, made the Tuba Meba, Lujan. Zuchu the Debajan Tuba Mentos, Padu Ludo, the Zuchu the Debanajin, Retan Rad, the Chudna, someone two, some light of his Tuba Mentos, Con Zul on those, when do you say you Shadus Jens, Shadus Jawa Shama, take his Jabaju, then cheating her to cheat Geshe Pensitos, then cheating her to cheat Geshe. Geshe Pensitos, Retun, Padu me Badu so me Badu Tongos, Retun, Sami Tabitons on du, Monsieur Khensur Badu Tons, Tongoares, Jenda Tongo Maris, Padu me Badu so me Badu Tongre, Lai Badu Tongre, Retun Tongres, and then Monsieur Baina Tongres. The Madigenda Tomaris, Lessa. And then Lud
Kabaka,
Ted Mandro Woodua,
more
Toba Majin, Zutu Debajin to Toba Metal, Tak Susan Woodus Jules, Abudamakoja, Julie John, Modus Shazujens, Joan Hama made Joa Lemba in the middle of waters, Sai Joa Lemba in Sandra, then the cheating her to. Geshe Pensitos, then the cheating her door, and Padu Trune, and Kaza cheating her to Geshe Pensitos, Retun Lami Tabetons, Padu Retun to Tongre, Monsieur against Tongres, Lady Zuchu shoot on dance, and the Zuchu W, Zuchu Ombukusan. Abbot Tamara was almost on your mares, 2 men then. Madutan Tazawos, Madutan Sandu, me Padul Chesadu, me Jolan Gursandu, Tandu, me Padul Chesadu, and me Jolan Gudumares, and then Jewel Dosumare, in a Kundil Dubasondos, Chedan Dugutan, never less acos, me Pasi Rosadu, and what the Jena, Yaji Melchegre, Dumares, Kundujina Dubayuares. What is wrong with what does it do? That and Gunkale chi pasitijene drug. Gunta chi pasitijene Gunkale and then chiggy Tibet maris, Mazamacho maris, and then Chishan the Joanuros. Gumba chi pasitijeba to what the Gunka chi Tibet meta chi Juala letu maris. Chi
Gunka,
winter.
Oh, chi pugo jegamare, ale, okay.
Chi basi tune, or the chi gungal tribe jegamare, and the chi joane yomares, Chishan the Joanurus, Chishan's Shina Jelly again, or the Negi, Dumig Sebajan Gagimero, or the Genegres, Basi Dunu Duta, Chi Basiche, Chi Joa Malebaje, Chishan Genegua,
J.
No Genegua. Then
the Kanga Sumba.
Tanda di Kondre, Kanda Konde, then the Kaza Guduzo, Tonga Basi Chene, Bear, Tonga Basi Chene, Gudu, Tonga Tiba Jagamares, Temajo and Yoros, what in the moment
Like Gangisene Consoni Kudu, Niki.
Guduzo, Tonga Basi Chibaina, and then Gundus don't Tiba Jagama, don't join Ayoma, Temajo and Yoros, Temas Jimmy.
Okay. Then the Dresagdue. The Bardo they can Sagdu.
Chezo the cheap out of the Jenna what the Gundu cheap out of Jivaina. Gundu cheap Jiba Majesta Chi Joana Yomares. Una Kabachi Cheshon to show on your rose.
Dressao, the nature. The Midote Dressao.
Tazasa what did that Tazasana, Padu the Kala the Tresima what the Padu to what the Mazu Pavas what the Meshazona, and the Ma dance what the Zamba Nodul Trine, and then how do the shadow to what the Mensan what the Tangrita, Su dancer. The Tremata Padu Nosho to Padu Sakuras, Padu del Trezalo, Trezagueta, Telkala to the train, but
Sampa
Madut and Trezavos. What they but
Mar Honey Dung
March, Honey, Zambaje,
Zampa, okay.
What do Nyandu see now? Nakan, Duzan, or the Jeju to the Tangre.
Okay, Jeju. Okay, two Chena. So number 3 has kind of a large amount of material in it. So I think I'll read it and then go through the commentary after. So furthermore, the being of the intermediate state possesses a complete sense of sensory faculties, such as eyes, as well as the form of the body it will have in the realm into which it will be reborn. Until it takes rebirth, its vision is unimpeded like divine vision, a type of super-knowledge, and its body as well is unimpeded as though it had miraculous powers. And we have a quote from Vasubandhu's Abhidharmakosha, the Treasury of Knowledge. It has the form which it will have in the prior time, which is the time prior to death in the next life, beginning with the moment of the birth in the next life. Others of the same type, or those with pure divine vision, see it. It has miraculous karmic power and all sensory faculties. It is unimpeded. It does not change. It feeds on odors. Vasubandhu means that the being of the intermediate state can be seen by others there who are of its own type and by persons who have used meditation to attain the impeccable divine vision. He also claims that once you reach the intermediate state for a certain rebirth, you will not change to the intermediate form of any other rebirth. However, the Compendium of Knowledge holds that such changes do occur. So we'll go back. It says, so a being of the intermediate state has all of its sense powers. There are not any of those missing. And it has the sense powers of the type of the being that it would be in its next life after the intermediate state. So when we look at that term, imperfect faculties, just as a translator's note, we see it as one of the hindrances to Dharma. They don't have imperfect faculties, so they have working faculties in the intermediate state. And the faculties are the faculties of the type of being that they will become. And the form that they possess is the form of the type of being that they'll become. So if they are going to be born as a human, they are in the form of a human. And the others that they see around them are humans. If they're going to be born as a god or a deity, then they will be in the form of a god or deity, and others around them will be in the form of gods or deities. Or if they're going to the lower realms, they would be in the form of that lower realm being and see other beings of the same type around them. So this is what is meant by that. They will take on that form, but the body that they possess isn't like a solid body like we have. Rinpoche says it's like a light. Light is able to go through things without being impeded by it. So for instance, if an intermediate state being has to go through rock or go through mountains, it's not a problem because they aren't blocked by anything solid, and there's nothing in their way. And also they're able to see very, very far, and their vision is unimpeded. But again, if they do not have clairvoyant powers, then they're only able to see beings of the same type. They're not able to see any other types of beings. But those who have reached certain levels of meditation and have achieved clairvoyance are able to see more than an ordinary being without that type of clairvoyance. And when I use that term ordinary being, I mean just someone who's not clairvoyant, not someone who hasn't seen emptiness. Clairvoyance isn't inferring a seeing of emptiness. It's a concentration state where one is able to have unimpeded vision or mental, the mind less impeded. But it's not inferring emptiness. I want to make that clear when I say the word clairvoyance. So that's all that those beings are able to see. So they have eye sense powers, they have ear sense powers, and so forth. So then we move on to the quote that shows where these points come from. And it says, it has the form of which it will have in the prior time. So the form of the life one is going to be born into is the prior time. So the being is in the form of the type of being it will become in that life after the intermediate state. So it says, which is the time prior to the death in the next life. So it means the life from the bardo, intermediate state. And then it says, beginning with the moment of birth in the next life, others of the same type are those with pure divine vision see it. It has miraculous karma power. So only able to see others of the same type, unless, of course, there is clairvoyance. And it says all sensory faculties, and all sensory faculties. So there aren't incomplete sense faculties. They're complete. That word all is the opposite of incomplete. For as far as terminology. And it says it is unimpeded. It does not change, it feeds on odors. So intermediate state beings don't eat food. They're not able to. They actually eat sense. So that's why in Tibet, when somebody dies, we for 49 days perform rituals where we take honey and we take butter and we take tsampa in the morning and night and we burn it on a fire. And we do this in order for the intermediate state beings to have sustenance. And this, again, is done ritualistically for 49 days because that's the maximum length of time that an intermediate state being is there. The maximum time of the intermediate state is 49 days. So that's the reason for that. And then Vasubandhu means that the being of the intermediate state can be seen by, we went over that, by beings there who are of its own type and by persons who have used meditation to attain the impeccable divine vision. He also claims that once you reach the intermediate state for a certain rebirth, you will not change to the intermediate form of any other rebirth. So here's where we find differing opinions. So Vasubandhu asserts that once you take a form in the intermediate state, there's no changing that form whatsoever. You will remain that until you take rebirth. But Asanga in the Compendium of Knowledge disagrees with that point. So it says, however, the Compendium of Knowledge holds that such changes do occur. And we find many points made to support that. So for instance, if a being is going to be born into a dog's birth, become a dog, in the winter there aren't dogs born in the winter time. They don't have puppies at that time. So at that point they wouldn't be able to be born as a dog. So therefore they would change to a type of being that they could be born as. Or another example is a bear. If it's a winter time and the being is going to be born as a bear, then there's a change that has to occur because bears aren't born in the winter time. So these are points that are made in the texts about conditions that might be present that would make it necessary for that change to take place in the intermediate state. And Rinpoche said there's many, many examples besides those, but those are some examples that are given. And that's it. So these, in the Compendium of Knowledge, Rinpoche was restating that you find these examples of dogs or of bears, I think cow or oxen, maybe. Definitely bears and dogs. I just missed one word. It was just another animal example where there would have to be that change.
So
the fourth category deals with the four existences. So the four existences are from death until the four existences are the intermediate state, the birth state, the state of the prior time, and the death state. So these are the four existences or four states, and this is number 4.
Shene jiwa malam pipa ne she jiwa malam pat basi res. Basi shows na shene jiwa malam pat basi res. Tambuji. Ta niba jiwa lembe keji tambut chisi jagu res. Meli jiba ina me jiwa lembe keji tambut chisi jagu tena jin ne matan lato ganga dabu res. Jiwa lembe keji tambut chisi dans. Ti keji niba penche ne chisi keji tamin haru ne ngadu sibas chisi keji niba ne chisi haru bado ngadu sibares tana ngasu ngadu sibal ne dio marbe ngadu sibaja ures ngadu je siba dans chi keji tamane chisi dunzule sombis keji tamado chisi rabat chamasa ni do dunzule jerota.
Chisi Rapatramo. Okay. So the four states or four existences are from as follows. The first is from taking, so it says, as for the term prior time, the treasury of knowledge refers to 4 states. So from death until taking rebirth is the intermediate state. So if one was to state, posit the intermediate state, and one was to ask, posit the intermediate state, you would say someone who has died but has not been born yet. That would be the intermediate state. The existence, that was very short, the answer that was given. It's the existence of someone who's died but has not been reborn is the intermediate state. So that is number one. The first moment of taking birth is the birth state. So the first moment when you're born as a human, at that moment, that would be the birth state. And it would be similar for gods and other type of beings. That first moment that they appear as what they're going to be is the birth state. And then the next moment, up till the final moment of death, is the state of the prior time. So up to that final moment. So right now, we're currently in this third category, the prior time. All of us are abiding in that existence or that state, the state of the prior time. And then the final moment, which is number 4, is the last moment of death, is the death state. And number 4, death state, there is subtle death state, and then there's coarse death state. So there's 2 categories of death state. Dikson.
What the chesi da basi da chesi do to ngaya keche do ta. Tabana na chesi de ab ngaya de na chewa chugu laje gontu maro da. Chewa chugu laje. Ha je na chewa chugu laje padu longu laje. Padu ne su de ab majina padu longu laje gontu maro da. Chewa chugu chewa ne su de ab majina chewa chugu laje de ab gontu maro. What to share keche do da. The Padu Longu Lanche, Java Tugu Lanche, Sonjago Marbe, later Mr. Gomadune, Uchene, True Deravata. What the Chava Chugu Lanche Yavajago Marbe? What is Sena Rule, Lai Jerida Durinda, what is going to Israel? Chava Chugu Lanche, Chava Chugu Lanche, Chugu Lanche, Chisen Koso. Another
word. So it's very important to understand the intermediate state. If one wishes to be able to generate the enjoyment body in the intermediate state, or able to utilize that time of death to abide, and from a tantric perspective, be able to go through the various stages of the generation stage and completion stage. So we see in the case of Lamrim Rinpoche, who was able to abide for 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks and abide in this state. And there's a specific term for it, and I just don't know. Maybe at break I'll be able to find it because I have the Grounds and Path text. But it's important in order to understand the intermediate state and this death process in order to utilize some of the tantric techniques and concentrations.
Then the Badu the leather Yamo Ocean Badu the Yongo Marta, Hag Julu Julu, Jumilu. Badu Lonsho Zoba Jumiku Chugmuru, Jermache, Badule, Sanji Bares, Badule, Jumilu, Julinia Bares, what is so Jermache, Badule Sanji Bares.
So it's stated that one is able to achieve an illusory body in the intermediate state. And Lama Tsongkhapa is a being that it's said that achieved the Buddhahood in the intermediate state, achieved the illusory body during the intermediate state.
What the Chua Chugu launched, what the Abu Yoba Yina, what the Badu later Yomo Ojo Badu Jumilu Jumilu, Julu.
So if one is able to, in the intermediate state, generate this illusory body, then the karma and the afflictions can be abandoned and transcended during that intermediate state.
What that Julut Druba in what it Jawat what the Jogu Drum, Jogu. Nangazu later no more with Jawat Mabaje, Tribigo.
So then one would be able to abandon the karma and the afflictions and truku and achieve I think it's a state of an emanation body, but that doesn't make sense. It's trupiku. Just
Truku.
Okay, so emanation body. Dixon.
What the Chawa Chugulanche, Badulungulanche, Chawa Chugulanches, what the Segudo, that in the Sibajero, Sibaje, Ruanga, Ruanga, Nazung, Ruasunje, and the Mela, Namarbe, Ruanga. Ruanga Bucaruina, Sibaje Bucarum Chow, Sibaje Bucaruina, Ruanga Bucarum Chagumares, Shosana, Sibaba was, Pasite. Ne Sibaji Bukarui, Ruanga Bukarumai, Pasi, it's a Marisette Marbe. Pasi is the Nangashi, Pasi Sibajendo, Sibajan on the Pasite, Pasite, and the Sibaji Bukarure, Ruanga Bukarumares, Rubanga Bukarumai, Nazun Ruamai, Hatame Ruamai Bezer. What is the word?
So these four states, so the Droanga, Sipa Je,
Droanga, Nason Sonje, Medala, Naro,
Lesso,
Medala, Sonje Namarbetene, Nason Son Mela, Droanga.
Then Droanga, this.
Droanga Bucano in the Sibaji Bucano Chop. Sibaji Bucano in the Droanga Bucano Macha.
Okay, so if there is there are 5 migrations. So Rinpoche said there are 5 migrations. There are the 3 lower realms, and then the gods and the human realms. If there is a being in any among those 5 migrations, they necessarily have these 4 states. But if it is these 4 states, it is not necessarily among those 5 migrations. And then Rinpoche said, if one says to posit the state that if it is a state, if it is a migration, it is necessarily a state. If it is a state, it isn't necessarily a migration. And if you say posit, Rinpoche said the intermediate state. But that's in the first one, so let's get back to that. I'll have to just get back to that one thing, because we're going to, I think, spend a lot of time on it. And I'm not going to be able to find it. Box C.
Chesi tang, di keji nipa ne, chesi keji tami ngaru ne, ngadu chi seba tanda tamarba, ngasu mei lu dhrawa, ngadu chi seba tang, chi keji tama ne, chesi dudu le sun bes, chesi rabat chamu sa do tenjiru da, dudu le sun bes, wa deba do jiba le jiba.
So the point is that the intermediate state isn't a state of where those 5 migrations are, because they're in between. So and it could change. So they haven't, at the intermediate state, they aren't considered as like a sentient being, a migrator. They're a sentient being, but they are not. They're in an intermediate state. They're not in a human realm. They're not in a God's realm. They're not in a lower realm. They're in the intermediate state. So you can say that they have these 4 states, but if it's a state, it isn't necessarily one of those 5, because an intermediate state is not one of those 5 migrations. It's in between. So that was the point that was being made there. So Rinpoche just went back over them, and I realized it as he was. So from the death until taking birth is the intermediate state. The first moment of taking birth is the birth state. From the second from when someone dies until they're born, that's the intermediate state. The first moment that they're born is the birth state. From the second moment until the final moment of death is the prior time, and then the last moment of death is the death state. So if it is among the four states, is it necessarily among the five migrations? You would say no, because the intermediate state is not among those five migrations, and there aren't six, so there are only those five categories. But if it is a migration, it's necessarily has these four states. If the migrator necessarily has these four states. Diksung, self-ujasung.
Chisi la tubi nguri yinba la tala tru ne jiwa ngami lu yi jen dundaba tang yang shimi lu ji izu sheba tong ne sha shedan ji jiwa ngama tang shedan ji shimi lu jen dundaba ne kuna da kanya mebe druda kuna wos watan mata gaba jagun wata kaji jiga wata padu de shabu shakat jiwa ngami luyagin rabu yuwa shakat jiwa shimi luyagin rabu yuwa res wata sagdu de tel kong mudus jen machi kanju denjun song mudus tazu jiwa langbi chisi ji dula dubi ngori yinba la sang ne tela tru ne padu de jiwa ngami luyaji ijen dun doba tans yang shimi luyasu sheba yang tune sha shedan je jiwa ngama tang shedan je shimi luji na je doba ne kuna da kanya me druta kuna usu ngaba dire padu jiwa shimi lugi drabja gurma tu jiwa ngami luja lunda being said what the druta is no true the take mundus
lessa. So now we get to number 5. And it's to negate something that's incorrectly asserted at times. Some claim mistakenly that the being of the intermediate state has the shape of the body from its previous life. There are also those who claim, in the view of Asanga's explanation of this being's physical shape in its next life, that it is in the image of the body from which its former life, in the image of the body from its former life for 3.5 days, and in the image of the body it will possess in its next life for 3.5 days. In the absence of any accurate sources, such assertions are simply fabrications. So Lama Tsongkhapa is saying that we can't find this idea that there's a split, 3.5 days of the old body and 3.5 days of what it will possess. There's not a source for this. We look at the Kangjur, we look at the Tenjur, we don't find anything that supports this idea. So Lama Tsongkhapa said it's just a made-up idea because it can't be found in any authentic sources. So that's number 5.
Ta druba dre na shi mene be hwe ji lu la druba ma yuwa ne ju shi bi sa de song bes ne ju shi bi sa song be hwe ji lu ton ne yi me de wa ju ban de ba ya ju ta so sa ta nga zu shi ne ba du de wa de khun shi ta ro ju ro ro de le na shi ne yo ma des na shi mene za ba du de su su shi ya ro de le ga bu ji ma des Nenju shebe sal sondus, nenju shebe sal sondus ta. Ta ngwaji lu tone, yi me de wa jwa de ba yang zu da sos. Ta kashi ji ge wa de, ta nga zu shi sa ge wa de ru tong su na, pa du de le yi me de wa yu wa res. Si la gen ji de te zu da de kong mu du de da. Zu da ko na wo sa. Ruta sos.
Listen. The levels of yogic deeds says that the being of the intermediate state does not desire its former body, since its consciousness does not remain there. Hence the assertion that it becomes disturbed upon seeing its former body is also a fabrication. So the consciousness has left that body. It's no longer, as a note, now intermediate state. So there isn't, it's separated from that body. So therefore, there isn't any desire for it or any way of seeing it, because it's no longer connected to that body that's in that specific realm. It's no longer there. We'll take a short break. Snack time. Let's get started.
Oh, yeah.
It's now
Truba
Shipa Ngapa
Truba Dima Nashi Mene Rudla Nashi Mene Zang Huji Lula Deba Manu Nanju Shibisal from Rores
the Drupa.
Sombe Kajigan Huji Lutone Yimadua Joa Yoris against the Drutaris Yimadua Yomare Gabo Yomares the Truba Maraba that Dumba or Dumba Dumba. Okay.
So now we just finished number 6, and number 6, just to go over it again, is the level of yogic deeds, and that's Sangha's text, says that the being of the intermediate state does not desire its former body, since its consciousness does not remain there. Hence the assertion that it becomes disturbed upon seeing its former body is also a fabrication. So that's number 6. And then number 7 deals with the intermediate state as it appears to someone who is a cultivated non-virtue.
That Dumba the what there, and Dumba the Gawashi Basi, the Magashi Bas, and Hawang Chaba is at it. Magashi Basi ne, Shawa Nabon, Temo, Manat Hawa Tabus, Gawashi Basi ne, Nabu Gabon, ne. Dayu na jibi Chemin Hawa Tabus, what the Gawashi Basi the what the Magashi Basi the Dungasu Tulu Nabunda Rai Shawas na Rai Bugusha Blankety the Shaw the Naburo Shaw Nabon Chemo Manat Hawa Tab Chemul Debana Nangatu Nahuji Tondura. What the Dibashi Badu to attend up with you is Gawashi Badu, Gawashi Basine, Tong Gabons, Tong Gabo, Diana Jibi, Semin Hontabos, Chemul, what the Nakal and the Wagu, Hontabu is. What the Dumbare?
Nika Migewa
Dumbare.
Okay. So number 7. The intermediate state appears to those who have cultivated non-virtue as like a black blanket or the pitch-black darkness of the night, while those who have cultivated virtue, it is like a white cloth or a moonlit night. So here is the difference. It shows the two things in number 7. What appears to someone who creates non-virtue and what appears to those who've created or cultivated virtue. So those who've created non-virtue or cultivated non-virtue are in a kind of state of darkness. And it says as if there's a black blanket covering them. So it's that kind of darkness. And then those who've cultivated virtue, it's very white, like a white cloth. Like a moonlit night. So this is the difference of appearances between one who's cultivated virtue, for one who's cultivated virtue, and one who's cultivated non-virtue.
That Jeba Badu at the Karakar Tongo is in a round and refuge Badu dance. Badu Randa Badu to get May Badu to May Badu Tongo is. Jene Jan Tongos, Joalens of Jene Tongres, Randa Reduce Badu Tan, Tada Rangi Jene Jan Tongosa, Reduce Badu Lai Badu La Tongre, 네 메바도 메동그래 나송 바도 나송 동그래 안 고저와lensa 동그래스 어디 제바드레도와
So number 8 is you see beings of the intermediate state who are the same type as yourself, as well as the place where you will be reborn. So if you are going to be a human, you see humans. If you're going to be a god, you see gods. If you're going to be born in the 3 lower realms, you see those type of beings, whichever among the 3 you're being born in. Just as a note, I want to make sure it doesn't sound like you see all 3 realms. It's just meaning, if you're being born in hell, you see hell. Hungry ghost, animal, animal. So I just want to make it clear the way I'm translating it doesn't say that they see all 3 lower realms. So this is the type of beings that you see, and then you also see where you'll be born as the type of being that you're in the form of. So the place where you'll be born. Digso.
다 고바드 와테레 고바데 네 바도 긴두나 말베 응아도 주발레 니 바도 네 돈도 메이세바다보 마타네 신시가 지시가 마지반다고 요아레스 돈도 메이세바다보 다스 돈주 바도 네 와데 도와다버스 도와 나가도 마타네 도와요로 와테다보 요사레 예다 바도 춘다보 요아레스 뇌비 하이 바도 네 세다브레스 조칸기 바도네 까보송데 카두기 쳐바로스 바두 카두기 쳐바데 요아레스 카두기 쳐바 야 컬러 디벳
데 tongu도 데 돈다가레 데 카도가레 그 가리 tongu도
카두기 쳐바데로 왔다가도 요발레스 돈도 메이치바다 보스다도 어디 나버나 지여지로
Okay.
돈도 바도네 도와다 도와.
Okay.
너는 아주 마타도 도와 요로 된다고 주여서래.
도와 통도 네 카사칼라 네 도와이래.
도와나부 요아레스. 바도.
Okay.
도와나부 요아레스. 타부 단스. 예다지 바도네 추다브레스. 추다부 주여머래. 데빌 하이 바도네 세다브레.
That's
조칸 바도 카보송데 카두지 쳐바로사 뭐한테 고바데 바두이 카두기 쳐바티 예도사
That's okay. So do. So then number 9, the Descent into the Womb Sutra describes the color differences in the intermediate state. For someone who is reborn a hell being, the intermediate state is like a charred log. So this is the color that you see. So it's like a charred log. For one who's born as an animal, it is like smoke. For one being reborn as a hungry ghost, it's like water. For one being reborn as a deity of the desire realm and a human is like gold. And to be reborn a deity of the form realm, it is white. So these are the colors that are seen by this being. And what I was asking Rinpoche is everything this color, every single item there is it this color, and he was saying it's just the color that you see. So Rinpoche, the Yida, the Chala Kanga, Chudandra, like Chala.
Marida, Yida Badut, me to the Chundabu, Yida Badut, Warandabo.
Dekan Kanga, the Chudandra, the Kadok Chudandrapodu, the Yida agenda.
Yida Badut, Tondi Chunabu, Tongres,
Lessa.
The Yida Jujumadote, Yida Badut Chundabu, or Silla.
Okay, Lessa. The Yida Bardo, the Kanga, the Tona Chudandra, Kadok.
Okay,
then the agenda, Yida agenda, Chudan Drar Tondue. Gangisena the Ritun Drar. Okay. What I was asking is that just what I just said is everything, are the other beings of the same type in the color of water and the color, and Rinpoche said yes. So everything looks in this hue according to what's specified here. Tu Chena Rinpoche.
Sawa de chuba teredwa. Zume ne kan umani so chewa padu yolas. Tini ne zume to zume de jena kanto showa ti zume ji humbundu ji padume dos wote ta kande zume ne zukan dan de kan je sona padu yores zume pate debi jole zukan jole ne padu yores de batan zuni but zume je sona padu yomas zume veches
Lasso. So, number 10, there is an intermediate state when you are born into the two lower realms, the desire and form realms, from the formless realm. But when you are born into the formless realm from the two lower realms, you attain the aggregates of a formless being immediately upon dying. There is no intermediate state. So, if you are in the formless realm, and then you're going to be born in any among the two lower realms, so that there's desire realm, form realm, and formless realm, then there is an intermediate state. So going from the formless realm to the form or desire realm, there's an intermediate state. But if someone is going from any among those two lower realms, meaning the desire realm and form realm, into the formless realm rebirth, there is no intermediate state. There's a spontaneous there's this kind of spontaneousness that takes place. So there's no intermediate state, and the reason is there is no form. So there isn't in the formless realm. Therefore, there isn't this intermediate state of forms because there is no form to be born into. Dixon.
De quand de zogal jena badu me son chas merci de le marché bes ana ya da maje chame la badu me ban de ba mari so sa den chame sa ke wote de le chame sa na wote nyawa de ba jena mar beta ne son jena ro wote le badu me son ke jue sa le badu me sa na di mares badu yo res Same sagente nesun le chena badu yores. Badu meban de ba marisos what about jubare?
The Kanga Juba?
Jubare.
Okay, so then also contained in number 10 are the following sentences. In the classic texts that are reliable sources, there is no description of any other special cases where there is no intermediate state. Consequently, with respect to the assertion that there is a direct transition upward to a heaven or downward to a hell, it is wrong to claim that there is no intermediate state. So there isn't this... yeah, I've even read that in a text. I'm sorry. So there is not this lack of intermediate state, except in the case of the being who's going to be born as a formless being. So that's the only case.
Ta juji ba tere do ta ba do no su de ganes do res sai ba do chen le do res me ba do te ga do res ne juji ba sai ba do ne chen do me ba do ne te ga wo nga zo men do ndo ba yi ro da nie ba she ba na ji ba do ne 토도 된데 슈조도 좋아서 돼서 다 내가 디바사게 봐도도 응고도 살도 놓으면와 슈조도 좋아 아니 슈조도 좋아 손대서 내가 손송가로 공부한다고 내가 손송가로 어때 내가 손송가 봐도도 어때 슈조도 좋고 자고요 마다스 공부한다고 사 전들에 Matayeda Tundu Sun Rana Chetawajin Tundua Shedosa. Jundi Abadamakoja, what in Jundi Kazo Matayeda Tundu Sombate Ne Mate May Badu Muton Mandabare, Eda Badu, Edan Lutonabare, Tundu Badu Tundu Shejas. No. So then
number 11 is the as follows. The Descent into the Womb Sutra says that beings of the intermediate state who are reborn as deities ascend, those to be reborn as humans move straight forward, and those to be reborn as wrongdoers move with their heads lowered and their eyes cast downward. It seems that this last part is meant to describe the intermediate states for the three miserable realms. And then it says the treasury of knowledge auto-commentary, the three, humans, hungry ghosts, and animals, each move in their own way. So it's just saying that they move the way they'll move as the type of being they are in that state. That's the meaning of that their movements will be the movements of the type of being that they will become. Rinpoche, the Yanjir, the Jew, the Nandir Lajan, the Nyawapa Kashe, the Padmasambhava Dandrar, the Bardo Yomare, the Yom.
Bardo Yomare, the Tego Matata.
Are they? Okay.
That you knew about the Badu said the no, Badu says, Jedon Shab Dun, Padu says Shab Dun, Kazirina Dun, Dun to Yanshi, Kazi Padun Debaina, Dunta Dunba, Shabuji Shaguba Degre, Paduchi, and Tsene, G. Jemanas, Kazaji She, Padutu, and Joalim Jemanina Retatuna. Sha Dundu Nesos, Tese Shabdunes, Danian and Abametos, Neji Dania Baina, Shabaji to Lishene, Joaland, Chusukashi to Lishene, Joaland and Ramanam were Abayomades, Nian and Abamedo, Mania Naya, Le Gene, Sha Dunta Dunsen Geneje, Tetangedo. Never Jenny, Daniel, the pension to Menesosa. You come on, tell the Jinwan, Machepe, tell the Jinwan to buy Marisosa. Pardon the Kazi Junior, Dunta Duma Dema, Shabuji Shigo. You want to De Mares. Tell the Jinwan, can you tell you to some Lucida? Jinwan, you has a lover in a digmatis, Marisos, the Batu, Junior Badre.
So the number 12 deals with the lifespan of the intermediate state, and it's a maximum of 49 days. With regards to lifespan, if a being of the intermediate state has not found the conditions for rebirth, it may remain for any length of time up to 7 days. Once it has found such conditions, its lifespan is not definitely 7 days. It does not find the conditions for rebirth if it does not find the conditions for rebirth within 7 days, it assumes another body within the intermediate state. It may stay in the intermediate state from 1 to 7 weeks. However, as it certainly will have found the conditions for rebirth within that time, it stays no longer than that. Since the texts that are reliable sources do not describe a longer lifespan than this, the claim that the being of the intermediate state may stay longer is incorrect. So this is saying that there are 7 times 7 days that are possible for a being to be in the intermediate state. So that's a total of 49 days. So there is no intermediate state that lasts longer than that. Within 49 days, the being who is in the intermediate state will have found another rebirth. So that's the point that's made here. So it's up to 7 weeks in each week. So that's 49 days. And then they...
Jenny and Abameto, the Junibachi, Chusumba and Maresha. Jenny and Abameto, Junibachi. That day, Mania Naya, Lu Jene, Shadunda Dunsaji, the Neji, the Senji to Nangabachi, Jenny, the Beji to Menesos, Junkuman Nane, Jan Kane Jan, Television Machibes, Badu Television, Teban Dubane, Mariso, Chusumba.
The Yanja Chusumba? Shun.
Jenye na ngabo me to de juni ba je. Manye na yang lu je ne sha dun ta dun chen je de ne je. De pen je de ngaba ji den nye be. De pen je de ne mene so su jun koma kan ne. De le jin wa ma she be. De le jin wa ba du de le jin wa de ba ne mari so wo de ju song ba de.
Okay, I think that we've read too far. I think it breaks up with regards to lifespan. If a being of the intermediate state has not found the conditions for rebirth, it may remain any length of time up to 7 days. Once it has found such conditions, its lifespan is not definitely 7 days. If it does not find the conditions for rebirth within 7 days, it assumes another body within the intermediate state. Mañana. So I think that's 12. And then 13, it may stay in the intermediate state from 1 to 7 weeks. However, as it certainly will have found the conditions for rebirth within that time, it stays no longer than that. Since the texts that are reliable sources do not ascribe a longer lifespan than this, the claim that the being of the intermediate state may stay longer is incorrect. So one is stating that it's 7 for 7 weeks. It's saying that it remains for Rinpoche. The mi bardo, the shapu dun sar mi drar me jegdue. Kangisena the injike shapu dun the shapu dun sar then a jegdu.
Me badu te ro ku jesa ga ten ma ne sha du ba de res dun du shen de res je ne na chu chu ji no shen de wa len de sha bu ji du jo ne ba yo ma res
then the shapu dun then konso shedu then yanjer je the bardo je
ya ja je ne na jo len de jo ma ne na ya ja ba du ji res dun cha dun sha bu ji ji wo
then konso zu Chipa? Drapo.
Pardon. Yeah.
Okay. So the first point is that they stay up to 7 days, and then Rinpoche says that they die and then are reborn. So my question is that are they the same form that they've had throughout this entire time? Because there's this process of 7 days, and then there is a death, and then a rebirth. It's not a real death, but there's a changing that takes place every 7 days in this intermediate state. So I said, is it the same form, or is it something, could it be different? He said it's very similar form, that it's just that you're back into, if you will, every 7 days. So if you're going to be a human and stay a human, you have this similar form every time this 7 days occurs. But it can change. If the causes and conditions are there, then one can have, it's not definitely that it has to be 7 days if there's cause and conditions for a rebirth to take place. But within 7 days, this kind of transformation takes place over and over again 7 times until there is a birth. So I hope that's clear. It's not very clear as I'd like it to be, and I'm just trying to make it so everybody understands it, and I do as well.
Jujiba,
okay.
Jujiba, Lai Bado Tabo, the Sha Dunji Shenes, Lai Bado Sha Dun to Shigrovata, Shene, Lai Bado Tans, Sheneko Lai Bado Tan, Yana Malasubi, Badun Rutesa, Sha Dun to Shene, Tanzan, May Badul Genegre, Tanzan, Nasunda Matanjil Badul Genegres. Gunduz chi jawalena chi gunduz cheba meje chishang de jawanjoro gunduz tong basi de jana ne gunduz tong cheba meje jemi jawanjoro what to say
So number 14 shows how that change can take place in the intermediate state that the Compendium of Knowledge posits. We previously saw that a Sangha in the Compendium of Knowledge states that this change can take place. Now number 14 kind of supports that and kind of expands upon that. A being of the intermediate state that is to be reborn as a deity, for instance, may die after 7 days and either again reach the intermediate state of a deity or else reach the intermediate state of a human or some other form. This is possible because a change in its karma can transform the seeds for its intermediate state. The same holds for other beings of the intermediate state as well. Sobudu.
So,
number 5, we've now moved.
what the tomb de that then what the ngay to jiwa ina ngay je ina ngay to jiwa ina ne ba si de ji ne so ran dan ri tun bi ji ne so ran dan ri tun bi sentient ton ne sa sentient ton ne da la ta wa dan so wa la so ban de ne ta wa de zhe zhe de ne de ba yong re ji ne so ruan de ba ju la de tomb re.
So now we move on to number 5, which is how you then take rebirth. And Jayan Sheba states that there are 9 categories in this particular section. So the first category is as follows. If a being of the intermediate state is to be born in a womb, it observes beings of the same type as itself at its future birthplace. It then wishes to gaze at them, play with them, and so forth, and desires to reach this place. This is number 1.
What the tomb of the Redua? Tanya Battery Pami Kotala Shinjulu Tonga Jetesa and then teach Pamani Nyabo Sheba Majin to Nyabasheba Jumajin to Tonte. Tala Chabanjuro sa ne Pami Kota Pai Koa the Mai Koa Yoroa Kota la Shinjulu Tundes Pai Kota the Mai Kota Lode Shinjulu Pama Tungres Pami Kota the Pama Marawa Pama Maijento Pama Yimba Tungres Shinjulu Tunga Jete Tice Pama Nyabasheba Majento Pama Nyabasheba Majento Nyabasheba Jumajento Tondesa Nyabasheba Tibajeba Tongres Tala Chabanjurosa Dosa Chigres Teyan Mujanane Pamela Devan Dujins Mujanana Pamela Devan Dujin Jebala Chate Nyoran Dotosa and Pujanane Jebata Javan Dujin, Pamela Chane, Nyawan Dodo, Tata, Data, Nenju should be Sane, Pamangu Yimba, Pamangu Tonga, Meba, Kotala Trine, Nyabashiba Tonga, Shedosa. What about the Niba de Redua?
The Kutrala Trine, they don't agree.
다간데 밤에 고자 통도 밤에 고자 파마마로 파마마이마라 파마 통도 그래서
네, 투체
줄줄다
indicated sobiman
밤에 고자라 신주로도 동아제데 데이즈 파마니 냐버셔바 매진도 냐버셔바 주마진도 통데 달라 차반주로사 대야 뭐잖아 뭐지바이나 Pamela Javan Dujin, Pamen Javan Dujin, Jibala Chaba, Chate, Nyoran Dosa. Pujanane, Jebatan Javan Dujin, Pamela Chane, Nyawan Doda, the Neju Shubi, Sane, Pamangu Tonga Meba, Kotala Trine,
Okay, so now number 2. It misperceives its father's semen and its mother's blood as its parents lying together. So I asked what this misperception was. It's actually seeing the blood as the mother and seeing the semen as the father. So there's almost a hallucination that takes place where they see these substances as people, or they're just substances, they're not people. So I asked what that misperception was. It says, it misperceives its father's semen and its mother's blood as its parents lying together. Its parents are not actually lying together at this time, yet as if in an illusion. It sees them lying together and becomes attached. If it is to be born female, it turns away from the woman and desires the man. So attachment to the man takes place. So there's this illusion that's taking place. So this being is seeing the blood and the semen as the parents lying together. And then if it's going to be born as a woman, it turns away from this misperceived mother and then focuses on the man, the father, and becomes attached. The opposite's true. If one is going to be born a man, then turns away from the mother and then turns away from the father and then becomes attached to the mother. So, but what they're becoming attached to, I just want to make it clear, is just the blood and semen that they're misperceiving as their parents lying together, because they're not actually lying together. It says, in this way, as the levels of yogic deeds explains, it does not see its actual parents. It sees them lying together through misperceiving the semen and blood. That's number 2.
다 송바 되네 송바 됐다 빈데 받제네스 밤이 고자라 밤아 통네 될데 받제네 제달 냐와쇼바 대다나 대다레 제바다 밤에 디 요라 가야만 나와 밤이 참만이자 통스 되는 와대 조고들 밤이 참만이 포도 매일 참만이 통으로서 통어 들라 추네 들롱라네 되는 바시 등가네 아니 최신 조사 근데 바시 등가는 어디 조련도 그랬다.
Having conceived such a desire, so this is number 3, having conceived such a desire, the being of the intermediate state draws closer and closer to the man and the woman, eventually arriving at the point where it cannot see any part of their bodies except for their genitals. Angry at this sight, it dies and is reborn. It has this attachment, this desire, and as it gets closer and closer to the father and mother, the man and the woman, who now, if it's a woman, they've been focused on the man, a man focused on a woman, as they get closer and closer to try to actually see what they're attached to, all they perceive is the actual genitals, and then they get angry, and then they are born. Or conceived, we would say.
What that Pamani Chabajudes, Pamani Chabajude, the Chatabi Kosu Boba Nas, and then you Konakoa Kawanjun Lasa. Tapamani was Mazamba should do the Koa de Marbe, Koa de Shugule, Nakoa Kabuchi Tibakashi Don Wores, Koa Kawanjun Las. Di jila ni ga le khoa tiba ni dön ma za wa ju de sa di jile phama ni ga le ane ni ga le khutra ki tiba ni dön ma za ju de ni mai ne su de ne buna mai ne su ju no de ne di je ge de da ba du de jwale le bare 오마고 장유 진바신도스 오마도 꾸는 파자산테 정마자소나 내가 지창으로다 제마제도 잡아줘도 대단 렌지도 바시데 ngabanjola사 저발렌도 그러 등가바다 뒤냐도 꾸지 나바시비 군도 나바시비 뒤들레 제비 온보 온빈 차 차차와다 제바테다 튜비 코란두보 온보다 제바 젠종테스 디두수 나시슈비 年上学写小屋，写小屋。关于开门那边那间呢，那些几年上学有多少？这个关于开两个做我的教两个多的，关于个教两个的是，关于开门来那参与是那些嘛的呗，参与那些上学那个的是，我都送嘛的呗。送吧，这代表九万对吧呢？9万对呢是吧？是吧？是吧？等下旁边你吃吧觉得啥？等下旁边你吃吧觉得，对吃这不告诉爸爸呢？我等你嘛的。等下旁边你吃吧觉得，对吃这不告诉爸爸呢？如果高啊，中了。第一节了，你个来，裤衩给提把你专门上中的啥？旁边你下来，裤衩给提把你用过的是。等你买一件那顺这呢？不能，我们哥张宇这么些多，差不多得当3季度80吨干交来的不是吧？等干吧2季度，估计那不是设备推得来先呗。我比中啊，全部吃炒当，这不得当，特别苦茶对吧？我不得这吧，严重的第一就是说，那些说的你上学我是，关于开门来吧那些呢，那些你上学的都是，我都不听不的。
Okay. So number 4. Moreover, the mother and father generate desire, which becomes intense for a period, at the end of which a gelatinous semen is emitted. Then drops of semen and blood invariably issue forth from the two of them, mixing within the mother's reproductive tract, then congealing like the skin on the top of boiled milk that has been allowed to cool. So Rinpoche said, when you leave boiled milk out after a time, as it sits and the temperature goes down, it gets a skin on the top of it. So that's the example given to show what the state of it is like. At this point, the intermediate state of the being who is to be reborn ends, and this being's fundamental consciousness enters the congealed mass. The force of this consciousness brings together a developed combination of blood and semen that is conducive to producing the sensory faculties, as well as a mixture of the former congealed blood and semen and subtle traces of the 4 great elements that are the causes of the 5 sensory faculties. These traces are something that is other than the congealed blood and semen. Okay, I think that's where it stops. Something that has sensory... I'm going to just read on, but I believe it stops there. Something that has sensory faculties and that is other than what was formerly there arises. After the consciousness has entered at this point, it is called rebirth. Those who do not accept that a fundamental consciousness exists assert that the mental consciousness takes rebirth. Okay, so I'll just see where we start in just one moment. Oh, I think it goes all the way. It does. These traces are something that is other than the congealed blood and semen. Something that has sensory faculties and that is other than what was formerly there arises after the consciousness has entered. At this point it is called rebirth. Those who do not accept that a fundamental consciousness exists assert that the mental consciousness takes rebirth. Okay, Diksun.
我当时我不见得写，我教完来去读的那些个多啊，就送把那些，第三参与把都吹下毛大有了，吹下个大那我参与把这个，或者不见得写把那些通过有那么拿过嘛。
Less so. This is how we present the process according to Tibetan Buddhism. Now, science has a lot of equipment that they're able to see more subtle things than we could before. So whether or not this is concordant with the assertion of what science says, I can't be certain.
What does it do? What was Marbe?
So this is where we might doubt some of this.
Tangabatere Nabatella, Sona Chungina ne Rima Wachetesa, Sona Chungina, Narima Buchenegres, Mawachete, Poatan Jubite, Kuju Jatan, Dambutan, Nase Tubula Subi Nado, Roa Nan Junglas, and the Gawashibi, and the Gawashi Shibane, Ritumbachetes. Shiwadang, Tianbi, Janjungshin, Kansan Dang, Jamais Kala Subinesu, Roatan Jungons, what they, and the Sona Chung to Sukangalo, what the Rimal Chendegre, Tene, Poatan Jubice, and the Jan Damada Kodiamendo, Kuji Jatans, Dambutans, Dambus and Angatu, Satan Dabayus at the Mendo, Chudan Tendile, Dambutans. Then Nase Tubo, Nase tree, Maribor tree, Lasu not to draw, Tama URS, Tama Jolas, Goa Shembe Shebi, Sheban Ritumbachegares, Ritumbachete, Rituachete, and Jabugaritan, what in the Ritubal Chene, Shewatan, Heavy Anjul, Danyamuka URS, and the Kamba Zambutan. Jamais quand la souvenance droit content en guerres donc on se voit de batule ngabare
Number 5, if the being of the intermediate state has accumulated little merit, it is reborn into a low class. As it dies and enters the womb, it hears a loud clamor and sees itself entering a marsh, a thick forest, or some other such place. If it is currently cultivating virtue, it is reborn into an elite class. It hears peaceful, pleasant sounds and sees itself entering a mansion, palace, or the like. This being then remains, I think that stops there, and the like.
That Niana nebate Sha Duntra Suji Jingeto, Yonla Daniela Tanji Dembanjurosa Suji Jingeto, what the Yola Daniela Sama Chaton Tours, Joro. Tene Shaji Lombana, Ted, Neshaji Lombana. And the Buguchi Ungres, Dagusha, Ama to Bugucha the man, Chiago, the Suko, the Son Terrible Shiando, what the Nazubasu, Dagusha, Junior, and Daguta, Shabuchutula, Buguchi Ungres, or could the Shida or Tizan, Terrible Hago, what the Shida Marba?
So number 6, this being then remains in the womb for 38 weeks, and there develops all the limbs and extremities. 4 days later it is born. Then he did long soon.
Nena never ne, Shadunja Sujaji, near to Yola Daniela Tanjita, Dembajuro. Then Shah Jilabana said, and the Buguchi was Dagushacho. Near to Jubale, near Juba Tangadua, near to Jubale, Tena. Doggone, telling dinner, shit doing doggone, doggone laboration, who could chat on, chat on this. Dawajiji, do magic, shit to do, I mean, Dawaji also, who could Zubuk to the true, chat on do your matters. Do magic, shit to Zuba Mino. Dawa drug on Dungeon and Madute, Yela and Yela Masan Juro. She son batabo was in the da Jeba not to Jubal Sheba Shaws. What about Marba?
The Drupa Dumba.
Drupa.
Hanga, okay. So the next, number 6, it says, this being then remains in the womb for 38 weeks, and there develops all the limbs and extremities. 4 days later it is born. According to the Descent into the Womb Sutra, the fetus is fully developed after 9 months or more have passed. At 8 months it is almost fully developed, or at 6 or 7 months it is not fully developed as its limbs are not complete. Study the Descent into the Womb Sutra for details on these stages of development. And Rinpoche also said, and also look at what science says and see what we're able to know because of their progress about it from their perspective as well.
다 뉘바 되는 마 제네스 르르 맨나 제네스 르르 맨나 만들라사 마소나 테 메지 녀와지 레셰신 사바 녀와지 레셰신 사바 로서방 샤앙 파총라 수바사 네 세전수는 요로 파바 총해 파총라 수비 도미제나제 바시네 제네소 어다 샤서겐다 파서겐다 파송다 어디서간로 그 어디 제시가서 그 로다 파다 어디서 상황의 차원으로 로서바 샤앙 파송라 수비 도미제나제 디바사겐 나제 바시네 제네소 로라소바 제네소 로라소바 통고레스 말라진도 문화재도 통해 공비용하게 가요 때주고사 되네 제네제도 달라트네 바시가지 제시도 제데스 되네 어때 녀와는 내 손전도 거죠 대신도 녀와단자유 예다 바와진라 소바 제와야 대단자 오서 어때 dwimbare.
Number 7. If the being of the intermediate state does not have a desire to go to a birthplace, it will not migrate there. And having not done so, will not be reborn there. Take, for example, the case of those who have committed and accumulated karma for a rebirth in a hell. Like those who have no vow against activities such as butchering sheep or poultry or marketing hogs. In these people's intermediate state, they see as if in a dream sheep and such at their future birthplace, and rush there, driven by their delight in their former habits. Then anger is aroused at the forms which attracted them to the birthplace, at which point their intermediate state ends and they are reborn. Hungry ghosts with goiters and others who are similar to hell beings take rebirth in a like manner. Okay, so we're going to end here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to wait for Thank you. So the two questions. The first one is prompted by the last paragraph on page 310, which states that there's an intermediate state where you're born into the two lower realms, the desire and the form realms, from the formless realm. Mm-hmm. And it was my understanding, and I might not have this right, that within the formless realm you've seen emptiness. So how? Okay. Since I'm trying to figure out how within the formless realm you could have accrued negative karma. So you can accrue negative karma within the formless realm?
The Zume Kang Deken Megewa Sa Tugdue.
Zongan Kang Mago Mosaba Yamare. Yamaris. Hama Sasha Magi Bacha Yudro.
So they don't accumulate new non-virtue in the formless realm, but they have imprints of those from previous lives in the while they're abiding in the formless realm.
Okay, and that's how they could
take on
be
another
reborn.
Rebirth.
All right, I have that. So thank you. So the second question is, it sounds like if someone is to be reborn in the human realm, you would have a maximum of 49 days in the intermediate state and 9 months in the womb, which is about 10 and a half months. So has anybody looked at the rebirth time for a tulkus, and typically have those been within 10.5 months from the time of the death of the previous incarnation to the birth of the reincarnation of that tulku? Has anybody actually kind of looked at when a Rinpoche dies and his rebirth? And sort of done the math,
it's all
and is it
different.
generally
It's not
match
always
up?
the same. The Toku, the Kongchiwa, the Kenshin Rinpoche, the Toku. The Khensur, the Bardo Degadu, Jiju Jigo, Bardo Adedu. Chipa,
저거도 나가서 메이다도 저거도 그 되네요 말했을 저거는 지난 가서 나방아데 조다도 놓고 세니 나방아데 대비 조다도 저거 senso 사지로 다당아도 라마도 저거 메이다데 되네요 맞나 야보요래 네 인지 뭐라뭐요스
the Choku Nyune, Bardo Yomari, Gangisena Khensur Sanjit.
저거는 사지임처로 다 나방아도 대비 조다도 저거 sen이
So in the Tibetan tradition, we call them tukuls, but that really means emanation body. So that's what that word means. And just because a being is named as a toku and recognized as a being previously doesn't mean that it's any more than just a name that's been placed on them, because a toku is necessarily a Buddha. And a Buddha doesn't have an intermediate state whatsoever. So there hasn't been any, they're always different within the, when they're born from when they die. It's not a consistent exact number. And if they're really a tulku, there is no intermediate state.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
yeah okay yeah
And Rinpoche said some tulkus are good, some aren't necessarily. It's almost as Rinpoche is saying we have to question that, because a tulku is a Buddha, and it isn't always the case, and we shouldn't believe it is always the case. I think the Dalai Lama, what did he say? Lama and tulku, there's 4 possibilities. Muji, the Dalai Lama said. I'll explain that another time. Anyway, concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer.
yeah
Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Zandrapa shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tu Jirim Che Kutsi Shapi Derona, Lamrim Shemokan Trilna.